So what if you purchase the same number of shares every single week on the same day on MSTY and also earn that distribution every payout period? What would your portfolio look like? Curious? Well, let's take a look. Hello, my friends. This is Legend. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. I think this will be kind of fun just to see if purchasing every single week on MSTY, like a certain number of shares every single week, would you actually be profitable or would you be down in the play? Now you would earn that big distribution, of course, or would you still be down on the amount that you have invested? So I've been working on this spreadsheet and I'll go over there and we'll check it out. And this was just for fun because I was kind of curious myself. But before we do that, let's just recap of where MSTY is at. Okay, so here we are on the trading chart and you can see MSTY did close on Friday at $22.89. It did come down a little bit. Let's take a look at Mr. And as you can see, Mr. did break down below that support line that we were holding. It is still running through that support line, but it is on that bottom side. So we'll see if come Monday we're starting to trade down lower below that support line, and then that support line will then be a resistance line yet again. And of course the driving factor would be Bitcoin. And as you can see here, Bitcoin still just trading sideways. It is sitting at about 103K. It does look like it is crossing down on that MACD. The momentum has went red, so it is dropping. And the RSI 14 at 67. So we are coming down a little bit on Bitcoin. But like I said, it is somewhat trading sideways. But it is very volatile. So it could just jump up one day or it could just fall down. And of course, as it moves, Mr. will be affected by that, which in turn will affect MSTY. All right, so here we are back on Mr. And I'm going to turn on the Bollinger Band for Mr. just to see where it sets. And then we'll take a look at MSTY as well. I'll turn those lines off there just to clear it up. And then we're going to flip it over to the adjusted chart. Right now it's on actual, so we'll flip it to the adjusted just to get a better view of the indicators. But since Mr. does not pay a distribution or a dividend, it will not change the graph versus what it will look like on MSTY. But let's just go ahead and turn on the Bollinger Band here. And as you can see, we are coming down to that midpoint on that Bollinger Band. If it can get down below that, then might be a good time to DCA for myself. And as we see her on MSTY, same thing. We are getting close to that midpoint. And if that price can get down in that lower part of that Bollinger Band, for me, that might be a good time to DCA for myself. So anyway, that's roughly the update on the charts. Now let's go over to the spreadsheet that I had put together and just play with that as far as buying on a certain day every single week on a certain stock, and would you be profitable or not? Okay, so here we are on my new spreadsheet, and for this one, like I said, it's just for fun, and I can enter in a ticker symbol and the start date that I want to look at, and I would enter that over here in this area, right? So I can enter my ticker symbol, I can enter the start date that I want to start my evaluation at, and of course the end date, I've just got it to today's date being the end date. This could be changed if I wanted to change it. But for here, as you can see, I've got this enter the day to auto-populate. So I can pick a day, any day that I want. It's a little drop down menu. So I can say I want to buy every Monday or every Wednesday or maybe even every Friday. And I want to buy a certain number of shares on those dates. So for instance, if I selected that I want to purchase shares every Wednesday and the ticker symbol that I want to use would be MSTY. So MSTY. And when I enter this, it will start auto-populating my chart below after I enter in the start date. So when I hit enter, it will load. And as you can see, the first date was actually February 22nd, 2024. Just for clarity, we'll just change it to February 22nd, 2024, just so that they match. And as you can see here, it didn't change anything. It kept it because that is the first date that it was actually available. Now, if I want to enter in June the 1st of 2024, I can do that just by entering in that date. And then when I hit enter, as you can see, it will start with that first available trading day, which would be that Monday, June the 3rd, because June the 1st would have been a Saturday. And since the market's not open on Saturday, you won't have a price for Saturday because you would not have been able to purchase it on the Saturday. So we'll switch it back to show the full amount of days for MSTY, and that was 2/22/2024. So there we are. Now, I can pick a day that I want it to auto-populate. Again, we selected Wednesday. Now, the way it's going to populate and calculate, it will assume that you can and would receive the distribution for all the available shares when that distribution amount is paid out. So therefore, the sheet will not be 100% correct, because if you did buy them on X date, you would not necessarily receive that distribution for those shares on the pay date. But the calculation sheet will show that you did earn those distributions for that date, simply because it is basing that off of the pay date. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that the sheet is for fun. It is not going to give you 100% accuracy, but it will get you very, very, very close. Now, one other thing is, this is not set up for any kind of selling the shares, right? This is a sheet basically of you buying, holding, earning the distributions, and then what would you actually earn afterwards, okay? And how much would you actually have in your pocket in the end? So we've selected the Wednesday for the auto populate. Now, how many shares do we want to purchase every single Wednesday? Well, I've just got in 10 shares. Okay, so I'm figuring, you're spending roughly $200 to $300 range, because it's usually between the $20 to $30 price per share on MSTY. And again, this is just for fun. So we have 10 shares that we're going to purchase every single Wednesday from the inception date of February 22nd of 2024. So you can see in this column here, I have a place where you can enter in any special buys or additional shares that you want to purchase or anything like that. So that can be entered into this column here. We can say on the day of inception, we purchased a number of shares at the close of that day. And that's another thing to note, that all of these prices are the end prices, right? These are the closing day prices. And that is this column over here. As you can see here, these prices are the closing prices for that particular day. But we can just say that we started off and we purchased and started off with 100 shares just to get us going on the day of inception. So now we have 100 shares right at the get-go, and then we're purchasing 10 shares on every Wednesday from the time that MSTY started all the way up to today's date. Now, you can see we have an ending balance here of minus $19,544.90. as that is how much you would have had invested into MSTY from the start by starting off with 100 shares and then purchasing 10 shares every Wednesday from start to end. But this number does not include any distributions, because if you look here in this column here for the distribution, as you can see, it is empty. That's because it's not pulling any distribution amounts yet. We have to plug those in. Now, I've tried to make this a little bit simpler and more versatile versus going in and looking on the MSTY website and seeing that on April 8th, 2024, we had a payout of $4.12, right? I don't want to necessarily have to go through that because that would just drive myself insane, and you would do it once before you were just done with it, right? So I've tried to make it a little bit more versatile so that it can be used for any stock that would pay a dividend, and you can enter in that information by sliding it over here, and you can see right here that we have to have the distribution per share amount here, and then we have to have the pay date here. So the pay date, and that's the date that it pays out, in our case, and for MSTY now, is every fourth Friday, right? That's the actual pay date. And over here, we've got the distribution per share. And that's where we would show like the $4.12 or whatever we got paid out per share in that amount. Now you can go through and you can enter in each one manually, or you can do a little shortcut here. And let me just show you my little shortcut. So I'm going to go over to the MSTY website, and here we are on the MSTY website, and I can just scroll right on down to the distribution details here. And this is under the YMAX ETFs.com, and then go under MSTY, and you can just scroll right down to the distribution details. So this gives the distribution per share, and it also gives the payable date. So I can simply just take my cursor and go to the very end, click and hold, and make sure that you do grab, and it has all those numbers highlighted. And I can just scroll right on up to the top up here as I'm still holding that mouse, that left mouse button, and then I can let go and then just hit Control C. And Control C is just to copy. So it will copy those highlighted numbers, and then I can go back to my sheet, and I will just click the first column right there, and I will do Control V as in Victor to paste. And that will paste those numbers right there in it. So as you can see, I had the declaration date, the X date here, and the record date right here. Those aren't needed, but just to make it simple to copy and paste, I have the columns there for that information, but it is not used for the calculations. The only thing needed for the calculations is the payable date and the distribution per share. And like I said, you can either enter it in manually or you can copy and paste them. The other three columns here in the middle, they can be blank. It can have stuff in it. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't affect the outcome. So by doing that, now I can slide back over here, and now you will see that if I look at that distribution pay date, and just to clarify that, it's not really a pay date, I guess. I was calling it the distribution pay date would be the amount of the distribution. We can change that just to clear it up. And I'm going to change it to distribution pay rate. Okay, instead of pay date, it should be pay rate, because this will be the price per share that you will be getting paid out. So I can scroll right on down here. And remember that $4.12 I said we got paid on April the 8th? There it is. It auto-populated right in there. And I can scroll on down. There we've got one on 5/8. Now, you'll notice that says Wednesday. And I know we get paid on Friday, but this was back when we were getting paid monthly, right? The first of the month roughly was about the time that MSTY was paying out. Okay, and here's one on June the 7th, and that was a Friday. And I have added the dollar signs because this is per share. And here's one for $2.33. We got $1.94, $1.85, $4.19, $4.42, and so forth. And it will just capture whatever you have over there in the table that you populated. So it will sit there and it will gather all that information for you. It will calculate out what that amount is per share, and then the total amount that you actually earned, because it'll take that number, like in this instance, $1.85 times the number of shares you have, and currently you have 370 shares, so that will give you a total of $686.02. So that amount comes out of your capital that you had invested. So we can scroll back up to the top, and now you can see that 19,000 that I believe it used to read is now $4,200, right? So you have gained back a very large amount of capital from the time that it started to now. Now that is purchasing 10 shares every single Wednesday from the very start. And we started off with 100 shares on the inception day. Now that could be changed. You can change your start date. You can change your end date. You can change what day you want to actually buy those shares at. And if you don't even want to buy any shares on those dates and say, I'd rather just buy them once a month, well, you can go in here and you can use user defined. And by clicking user defined, then it will take off the auto populate. So auto populate here, now in this blue column, are all empty. And it will only be showing and calculating from what you enter in for the defined number of shares that you own. So we started off with the 100. And let's just say every month we purchase an additional 100 shares at the first of every single month. Now I don't have a way of auto doing this because this here is user defined. You can buy every day, you can buy once a month, you can buy one time and never buy again. So it just depends on what you want. In this case, if we just bought that one time of 100 shares, we would be up $1,500 as of today if we bought on inception date. And we only had $2,100 invested. So we have gained back our $2,100 and gained and made $1,500 total above what we have spent. But say we want to buy every single month. So we can just simply go in here and say the first of every month, we're going to buy 100 shares. And let's just see what it does for our end balance. So I'm going to go ahead and do that so that you don't have to watch me enter in every single one at the beginning of the month. And as you can see, that's all I'm going to be doing is this right here. I'll just go to the first of every month and enter that 100 shares. So I will knock that out here and then we'll see what the total is at that point. Okay, so I have entered in 100 shares every single month, including 100 shares at the very start when it first started. And I've entered in 100 shares the first of every single month, and you can see that as we go on down. Now I'm not going to continue to scroll down because I don't want to make everybody sick scrolling through it like that. So how much are we at now? We're at a minus $10,917.67. So we have earned distributions, but we have still spent out more than we have earned. And that's not buying at a particular time. That is just setting on a continually 100 shares every single month. So that doesn't help us much there. We're still under on that. So what if we only purchased 100 shares? So what if we only purchased the number of shares that we can get from the amount of distributions that we earned? In a way, we're dripping the distributions right back into the stock. We're not paying any more, but we're just dripping those distributions right back in. So to show that, what we'll do is, since we are getting the calculation right here, this $412.86, that's the total amount that we did earn from the $4.12 times the number of shares we had, and we earned $412 because $4.12 times 100 shares is $412. Therefore, we're going to say we're going to use that 412 and purchase more shares the day after. Now, the time that it would actually drip just depends. But for this sheet purpose, we're just going to assume the next day closing price is the price at what the shares will be purchased at. So to figure that out, we'll just put in a quick little calculation right here in the user defined section, and I'll just say equals, and we'll take that total amount that we did earn of $412.86 the day before, and then we're going to divide it by the closing price of that day that we are buying those shares at. So by doing that, you'll see that we now will be able to purchase 11.9 shares. So I'm going to keep it as a decimal here, because if you are dripping, you should be able to be getting fractional shares. Now, it won't be out to this far of a decimal point, but just for the purpose of this sheet, we'll keep it as such. So I'll just drag this formula right up to here, and of course, since we didn't get paid distributions here, all of these will be 0. We're going to still start off with that 100 shares on the first day, and then we're going to take that same formula and we're also going to drag it all the way down to the end. Okay, and there we go. That's to the end of the numbers that we're showing currently, because we just want to see what it looks like. So if we started off with 100 shares and we spent $2,119 for those 100 shares, we dripped that money in to purchase more shares, then of course it would make sense that the ending balance is still that $2,119, right? We still are at our original capital that we have spent. But how many shares are we up to now? Well, now we're up to 354 shares. And if I wanted just to say, okay, well, what if I didn't purchase that last day? All right. And if I took that one off and say, okay, well, we're just going to gather that $700, right? Capture that. Then as you can see, we're at minus $1,300, right? Because now you have that 2,100, subtracted your 700, and you're at minus 1,300. So if you're continually to drip or not paying off any of your capital, or you're not necessarily holding the distributions, then yes, you are acquiring more shares, but you're just rolling it right back in and you're not really making anything on it. But now if you are in the accumulation phase and that's your plan to do so, then you are the boss of your portfolio and you handle it how you see fit. But if you're just continually to drip it right back in, then of course you're not really making anything on the play itself, not counting any kind of price appreciation, because the price appreciation itself is only good if you're looking at selling the shares. But if you're not looking to sell the shares, then the price of the stock doesn't matter. You're only looking at the distributions. But if you're rolling your distributions right back into the stock itself, then you're not actually making anything yet, but you're also not necessarily spending anything more on it than what you originally started with either. So whatever you started with, and then if you just have your drip on and that's all you do, then whatever distribution you earn, it just purchases more shares from that amount. So therefore, your max loss at that time would be what you have invested originally into it, not counting any potential loss, right? You do have your gains loss, right? Because you did gain that money that was yours, that you rolled it back in. But this amount is how much actually came out of your capital that was your hard-earned money. The other money, the distribution money, is the money that YMAX has paid you, the passive part. But if you rolled it back in, then you don't necessarily have it, and your capital at risk stays at that $2,100 from your original 100 shares that you purchased. Now, if you added more in it as you went along, and say you bought 100 shares that day, and then you bought another 100 shares the next day, as you can see, it is increasing because that is how much you have invested. And the way the calculation is right now, what we have in there now is you have all your distributions on DRIP. So if we take that DRIP off and we just have our 100 shares that we purchased at the very beginning, then you can see we've actually earned and made money. And it would be different, of course, if you're buying more shares. If I bought another 100 shares the next day, I have more money, because the more you have it up front, then the longer time that you have to recoup your investment. So basically, just to wrap this up, I just wanted to show that if you do buy every single week, it's very difficult for you to actually make anything off of it without allowing your distributions to accumulate to pay back your capital that you've spent. And all of this assuming that you're not selling the shares. And then, of course, if you have it on DRIP, then how much ever you have purchased above the amount of distribution that you have earned to purchase those additional shares, that capital would be at risk, like we were showing before where we had the 100 shares and we had $2,100 at risk because we were just rolling those distributions right back into the stock. So we weren't making anything, we weren't losing any more of our money, but we were losing the gains from the distribution in the mindset of gathering more shares. So if you are in the accumulation stage and that is your plan, then that is your plan. But at some point, you have to stop and let it start to pay you back. And that's why mostly I'm always looking for a low price to buy my MSTY. I prefer under my average share price. And I don't buy a lot of shares, right? And I don't have a whole lot to use to buy the shares with. I currently have about 400 shares, and I still do buy on occasion. But for me, the majority of it is gathering those distributions to help pay back my capital that I have invested into MSTY so that I can start showing a positive gain on the play. And that positive gain meaning I've earned more distribution than I have paid out in purchasing shares. That's my end goal. So anyway, I just wanted to throw this sheet together here. I've been working on it for a while just to try to make it a little bit more versatile and to also for my own knowledge just to see, well, what if I did buy once a month? What if I did buy every week on a certain day? Not necessarily picking the price, but just the day itself. And what if I only purchased one time up front? It was kind of neat to see what that all would look like. I did not purchase MSTY back at inception day, so this chart and this table is not representative of my position in MSTY. This is just an example. This was just for fun. There's a lot of things that you could do in between to help offset those numbers to be either for you or against you. So I think I'm going to wrap it up right there. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button and smash the like button. It'd be much appreciated. And as always, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please do your own due diligence before you get into any stock plays. And until next time, legend out.